your child is this is a Freudian observation as well, your child is almost all mouth and tongue when it's born. The rest of its body, well, you watch infants, like, even when they're, how old? 7 months, 6 months, 4 months, I can't even remember now. You know, they'll move their arm and they kind of go like this. It's like they have got no fine control. It's more like they have, you know, clubs on the ends of sticks. It's like that. Their nervous system isn't thoroughly myelinated. They don't have control over themselves, but their mouth and tongue are already wired up, and so otherwise they wouldn't be able to swallow or nurse. So the oral element is extraordinarily important for a young child. That's why kids put everything in their mouth, you know, even when they're a bit older. It's like they see with their tongue, which of course everyone can do. You know, if you put a block in your mouth, you can tell that it's like a cube. You can tell that it's a cube without looking at it. So you can see with your tongue, you can see with your hands, you can even see to some degree with your ears. Anyways, so there's social interaction right from the beginning, but for the point of simplification you might say, well, first the child organizes themselves into a functional unity under the pressure of social dynamics, and then they get unified enough so that they can attain unity with another child by setting up a fictional world and cooperating and competing within that, because that's quite interesting too, because, you know, people often juxtapose cooperation and competition as if they're opposites, but they're not opposites at all. Another Piagetian observation. So you say, well, is hockey a competitive game? And people would say, well, yeah, but then you think, well, really? Really? No one brings a basketball, right? So we're going to play by the rules. That's cooperation. Well, are the teams competing against each other? Well, yes, but they agree to compete within a particular landscape, and they all cooperate to maintain that landscape. And so you do the same thing when you're playing Monopoly. It's like you're trying to win, but at the same time you're cooperating. And that's society, man. That's society right there. You're cooperating. That's the big enclosure, and within that there are regulated competitions. But to separate those artificially and say, well, one's competition and the other's cooperation is just, it's just not very smart. It's not observant. That isn't how it works. And games are intensely cooperative, even if they're intensely competitive. I mean, the hockey teams are playing the same game, that's the cooperation. Then each team, there's competition within the team to be the best player, let's say, but everyone wants that because everyone wants good players to emerge, but you still cooperate like mad with your teammates, and if you don't pass and you know, play like a reasonable person, then they're going to not be happy with you. And so even within that competition, cooperation is regulating the interactions. And then you can think, this is a really good thing to think too, is like, you know, people often say to their kids, doesn't matter whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. And the kid, of course, has no idea what that means. It's like, what do you mean? I'm trying to win. And the parent says, no, it matters how you play. And the kid pushes them, and the parents really can't come up with a good explanation of why that's the case. They might say, well, other kids won't play with you if you're, oh, there you go. Because you could say, this is something to think about. So there's a game, and there's a victory within the game. But then there's the set of all games, and there's victory across the set of all games. And the victory that you attain across the set of all games isn't winning all the games, it's being invited to play all the games. And so if you play fair, then you're playing a metagame, and the metagame is how to win across the set of all games. And so if you teach your child how to behave properly, then they always get invited to play, and that makes them winners. And that's that. And so if you understand that, you understand something phenomenally important about the emergence of morality. You know, because people, moral relativists in particular, think that morality is relative, you know, and of course human beings are diverse, just like languages are diverse, and there's more than one playable game, but there's not really more than one playable metagame. It's like you're either the kind of person that other people want to play with, or you're not. And if you're not the kind of person that other people want to play with, then you're a loser. It's as simple as that. And that's true of all cultures. They might be playing different individual games within their culture, undoubtedly they are, but the set of all games that they play is still common across cultures. That's part of what makes us human. And then you could say as well, we're actually evolved to detect people who are good at playing the set of all possible games. And we actually know that. That's not theoretical. We know, for example, some things are easy to remember and some things are hard to remember, you know. Here's something that's easy to remember. You play with someone and they cheat. Man, you will remember that. That's like in your mind. That's not going anywhere. And so you're great at detecting cheaters and you remember. And that's because you can't trust a cheater, and you shouldn't invite a cheater to play a game with you because they might cheat. And so that's part of the innate morality system. You remember cheaters because they aren't good at playing the metagame. And of course you're evolved. Of course you're adapted to the metagame because you're the product of this immense evolutionary history, right? And whoever your ancestors were, which is an unbroken string of successful reproducers going back 3.5 billion years. You think about that. Every single one of your ancestors successfully reproduced. It's mind-boggling. The chances against that are so, it's billions to one, and here you are, the line of 3.5 billion years of success. The whole world was trying to kill you that whole time, and here you are. It's like, but you know, you're still only going to last about 80 years. So, but that's, you know, still, you know, good for you. So anyways, there were lots of games that your ancestors were playing across that immense span of time. Many, you know, lizard games and tree dweller games and crustacean games, you know, that huge set of games. And you're adapted to win across those games, all of them. And that's built into you, man. That's your central human nature. That's what makes you social. And it's not some mere cultural construct. Quite the contrary. It's so deeply embedded in you. It's what you are. All right, so, well, this is a story. It's a game too. That's another way of thinking about it, you know. Well, like, that's a Monopoly game. Well, what's the frame? Well, that's the rules of the game. And why do you accept them? Well, it's kind of arbitrary, right? It's like, that happens to be the rules. Hockey has different rules. Basketball has different rules. But what they share is that they have rules. Okay, so there's a frame. That's the rules. And then within the frame, there's a goal. And the goal is whatever the rules dictate. You know, it's usually the construction of a hierarchy of success within a frame. And so that's what you play. And so you play Monopoly, and it's like, well, we'll accept the rules, that's the social contract, and then we'll each try to win, and that'll be fun. We find that amusing. And if you lose, what do you say? Well, you say, well, there's always another game. And so that's great. So if you have that attitude and you play fair, then it doesn't matter that much that whether you win or lose, although you still want to try to win because otherwise you're not a good player, but you accept defeat gracefully because you can play again. And you'll win some and you'll lose some, and so that's not so bad, you know. And even if you lose, well, maybe you learn something, and you're doing a lot more than one thing while you're playing Monopoly. You know, you're having a conversation and learning how to interact with people and learning how to regulate your emotions. And so even if you lose, if you have any sense, you win. And if your kids have any sense, they know that. And so that way you buffer them against defeat. It's like, yeah, you know, next time. It's like, it's okay. And you should try, but it's okay. And that's useful information for people to know. So, all right, so you're always in one of these little frameworks, and there's just no getting out of it. So, and that's because, you know, at any given moment, it's like field theory. There used to be psychological theories that talked about the field of human experience, something like that, and this is kind of what that is. This is a field, and basically what happens is you parse out a little part of the world, say, and so an amount you can handle. So let's say it has some duration. You're not aiming at something 50 years in the future. It's because how the hell are you going to do that? There's too many variables, you know. So you're aiming at some handleable amount of time, and you posit a goal in there, and you plot your route, and then that tells you what's up and tells you what's down, because up moves you towards the goal and down moves you away from the goal, and that sets up your motivational framework so that you have something worth attaining. You know, that's a really interesting thing to know too. Is like, why have a goal? Well, it's easy. No goal, no positive emotion. because you experience positive emotion by noticing that you're moving towards a goal. And so if you don't have a goal, well, you can't have any positive emotion. So you better have a goal. And so you might say, well, what should the goal be? Well, we could start by saying, well, any goal is better than none. And then we might say, well, it should be a goal that other people will let you pursue, because otherwise it's going to be kind of difficult. And maybe they'll be even happy to help you pursue it. That would even be better. And maybe it's a goal that would enable you to learn how to pursue other goals while you pursue that goal. Boy, that would really be good. And so you can see that your goal is parameterized, but that doesn't mean that any old goal works. It means there's some goals that work nicely and some not so nicely. There are playable games and non-playable games. That's a good way of thinking about it. And you want to have a playable game. And there's a lot of them. Lawyer, plumber, you know, actor, whatever. They're playable games. And it's not obvious which one's better, but it's certainly obvious which ones are sustainable and which ones are worse. And so there's a set of playable games, and you need to extract from that set of playable games a game that suits you. And that would be partly due to your temperament, you know, because extroverted people want to play an extroverted game, and highly neurotic people want to play a safe game, and agreeable people want to play a generous game, and disagreeable people want to play a game that's highly competitive so they can win. And, you know, fine, but they're all within the realm of playable games, and that means they're socially acceptable as well. And so that means it isn't just arbitrary, it isn't just relative what you decide to do. It's heavily parameterized. There's a set of playable games, and it's large. The set is large, but there are commonalities within it, and that's why there are commonalities. That's why morality has a common basis fundamentally. And so that's partly what we're trying to investigate, is like, what's up? What does up mean? What does it mean? Is there such a thing? Now, one thing to remember is that if you don't erect a hierarchical structure with something to aim at, you got no positive motivation, because you experience positive motivation in relationship to a goal, not from attaining the goal. That's satisfaction. And besides, it's fleeting. You know perfectly well, you graduate from university, poof, next day you have a problem, which is what do you do next? And that's a tough problem. It's not like you've solved your problems by winning that game. You just introduced the problem of having to introduce another game. So it's unreliable as a source of positive emotion, but what's reliable is you set a goal and you try to attain it, and then that gives your life, that literally provides your life with meaning. That's what meaning is. Now it's more than that, but that's what it is. And so then you might ask yourself, well, what's a really good goal? Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. What's a really good goal? And now, okay, so you got that. So now I'm going to walk through, at least partly through, we'll see how far we get, I'm going to walk through Pinocchio with you, because that's what the movie's about. And it's hard to say how it came about. Like, it was written, a story by a guy named Collodi, C-O-L-L-O-D-I. It's quite a bit different, that story, the written one, from the Disney version. The Disney version was a product of the collaboration of geniuses of animation, essentially. So they were artistic geniuses, great at capturing motion and emotion and all of that, be stellar at that, and imaginative, tremendously imaginative, but collectively imaginative. And so they put together a collective product. And you might say, well, how did they do that exactly? It's like, well, they were good storytellers. And what does that mean? Well, it means you know the story that works and the story that doesn't. And maybe partly what you do is you kind of think out a story and you think, well, what if this happens? And, well, maybe this should happen. Oh, that's the thing. Oh, that would work. It's like the little flash of inspiration, right? It's like you got a piece of the puzzle that fits. You think, yeah, that would work there. And then you talk to the other people and you generate ideas, and someone says, well, what if they do this? And everyone goes, no, that's just not believable. No one's going to buy that. And someone else has a little revelation. They say, well, you know, it makes some sense somehow if they do this. And everybody goes, oh yeah, that really works. It's like, why? Why? Well, you don't know. You don't know why it works. But it works because it's the right story. And so what does that mean? Well, it's kind of associated with this metagame idea. You know, it's like There's a story that you should be acting out that works across games, and you have an inkling of it, you have a notion of it, you have a vague apprehension of it. It's sort of built into you. That's archetype. That's an archetype.